Aggretsuko follows a 25-year-old red panda named Retsuko. She works in Tokyo as an accountant, where she continually deals with relatable workplace situations. From a sexist boss, to nagging coworkers, to a never-ending workload, the only way Retsuko can de-stress is going to a private karaoke room and singing death metal to herself, all while hoping that someday she'll find a way out of this tedious routine. The first season of the show is honestly pretty great. It has memorable characters, silly humor, a nice arc for our main character, and some excellent commentary about the treatment of women in the Japanese workplace. However, as the show has continued, I found myself less and less enchanted by the world and messaging. While the show markets itself to be relatable and empowering to female audiences, it's becoming more and more clear that it's not interested in actually saying anything all that impactful, all due to a few key reasons. Howdy folks, I'm Jenny G, and today I'm taking a deep dive into the series of Aggretsuko. But before I begin, I do want to give a few disclaimers. First of all, I'm a white lady that lives in the US, so I obviously do not have the perspective of a Japanese woman in the workforce. I will touch upon Japanese-specific issues, but I will try to avoid critiquing a culture that I'm not a part of. And second, this video does contain mentions of sexual harassment and stalking, so if those are triggers for you, I would avoid watching this video. And lastly, this will contain spoilers for the entire series. I will not include video footage because Sanrio is touchy about that, but I will be including pictures and talking about everything, so if you still want to watch it, I would not watch this video. But with that aside, let's dive in. To get some proper context on Aggretsuko as a series, we have to look all the way back to 1960. That year, Japanese businessman Shintaro Tsuji founded Sanrio, initially under the name of the Yamanashi Silk Company. After initially just selling silk, in 1962, he began to sell rubber sandals with a flower design, stating, "If you attach added value or design to the product, they sell in a completely different way." It wasn't until Yoko Shimizu designed Hello Kitty in 1974 that Sanrio's true success was found in this iconic mascot character. There's a lot more history to Sanrio than what I'm summarizing, but try to remember these key facts for now. Initially, Hello Kitty was given a very small amount of lore. She lives in the UK with her parents and twin sister, she's very polite, she loves school and music, and also she's human. Like, seriously, Hello Kitty is canonically human. I don't like the implications of that. Anyway, she was designed to be an ideal role model for Japanese girls at the time. She has no mouth, so you can project any emotion onto her that you want. And of course, slap her into essentially any product that sells. As time has gone on, this has only been accentuated. Hello Kitty has had cross-promotion with basically every brand in the world by now. Like the rest of Sanrio's brand, Hello Kitty was cute, traditionally feminine, marketable, and most importantly, a blank canvas. She has little characterization or agency of her own because she's barely even a character at all. She's a corporate icon, a fake essence of femininity with a cute face. That's why, when Aggretsuko came along, it was a very shocking but welcome change of pace. Aggretsuko was first created by an anonymous Sanrio designer under the pseudonym Yeti. Sanrio was holding an internal vote for a new character with an office worker theme, and the character of Aggretsuko, a female office worker who bottles up her frustrations and lets them out through metal, was very popular. The character clearly connected with Japanese women, as her popularity very quickly took off. From April 2016 to March 2018, 100 one-minute-long shorts of the character aired on TBS television in Japan, establishing the world, Retsuko's personality, several of her supporting characters, and so on. And then, on April 20th, 2018, a full Aggretsuko series debuted on Netflix worldwide, with 10 15-minute episodes. And it was great! The first season of Aggretsuko centers on the average time in the life of Retsuko herself. She has to deal with her rude misogynist boss, Mr. Tan, she befriends girl bosses Gori and Moshimi, and gossips with her friends, Feneko and Haida. The main arc of the season is Retsuko's quest for a husband, so she can quit her tedious job and become a housewife. However, as the season goes on, Retsuko learns that forcing herself into a relationship just to escape her situation isn't doing her any favors either, which she learns through a failed relationship with a pretty spaced out and neglectful boyfriend named Masasuke. The first season is a really good start. Retsuko herself is relatable while stopping her quirks, and the sidecast is incredibly memorable as well. Most importantly, there's a very clear narrative throughline that involves actual growth for Retsuko. She tries to cope with her shitty situation by throwing herself into the arms of the first man that she meets, but then realizes that her coping method is only going to turn out worse for her in the end. She makes the choice to stay at her job, and while she needs to deal with the same frustrations as before, her growth helps her feel better equipped to survive it. A really nice moment that displays this growth is in the last episode of the season, when Retsuko is asked out by her coworker, the aforementioned Haida. Haida is essentially the show's second most important character, as she's a coworker of Retsuko who has had a crush on her for a long time. Since Retsuko was throwing herself into the arms of the first man she could meet earlier in the season, you would think that she'd instantly go for Haida. After all, they'd known each other for a long time, get along well, and it seems like the obvious ship. But after what Retsuko went through, she actually turns him down. She herself admits that she isn't ready for a relationship right now. It was still pretty clear that the showrunners were intending for the two to get together eventually. There's a holiday special that released the same year with some shipmate between the two, but it was really nice that the show wasn't rushing into it. In fact, at the time, I didn't even hate the idea of the two getting together. Haida had a crush, but he was still at least a somewhat decent friend on the side. As long as the primary focus of the series was still on Retsuko, I didn't mind the concept of a possible romance between the two. Once Retsuko was ready, that is. So, after the first season, there was a lot of hope for the future. There's a very solid groundwork to expand these characters, learn more about them, and see how they'll grow. And then Season 2 came along and didn't really do much with it. The second season of Aggretsuko is, quite frankly, not as good as the first. It's definitely not bad, there's still a lot to enjoy, but it's not very focused either. The season is split into two, mostly non-related arcs, revolving around Retsuko's new coworker, Anai, and her new boyfriend, Tadano. The Anai-focused half of the season is kinda decent, but the narrative payoff isn't super relevant to this video, so it's not really worth talking about at the moment. The other half of the season, on the other hand, is about Retsuko's new boyfriend, for Elon Musk, or Tadano. Yes, Retsuko starts dating a literal billionaire tech CEO. Tadano is different from her previous boyfriend though because he actually seems to care for her. Although on his first date he sort of takes her on a plane ride without her permission, and it's kinda weird, but whatever, the two hit it off pretty well. Everything seems fine until Tadano drops the bomb that he doesn't really want to get married or have kids, unlike Retsuko who very much wants to start a family. Not only that, but he starts pushing for her to quit her job. While he says it's because she hates the job and shouldn't have to work it anymore, that would also leave Retsuko in an almost entirely helpless position. She wouldn't have the security of her job or the security of Tadano being her husband. So once again she's presented with a choice. Stay with Tadano and lose the option to start a family, or stay with the job she hates but keep the option down the line. Once again, she chooses to be single and return to her awful job, changed and stronger from what she experienced. Overall, the season is far from terrible. There's still fun moments, the sidecast is still incredibly strong, and Retsuko still makes an important choice for herself. But at the same time, it's a very similar arc to what she went through in the first season. She falls in love with a new guy, thinks she'll be able to run away from her problems because of it, realizes that it won't work out how she wants it to, and then chooses to return to her job, resetting the status quo. While there's different specifics and all, the overall gist is very familiar and doesn't teach us anything new about the characters, with a few exceptions. The season ends basically the same as where it began. The only character who has less growth in Retsuko is arguably Haida, who still remains the most important side character, yet still hasn't moved up from Retsuko's rejection a whole year ago. He began the season still doting on her, holding onto his unrequited crush, and ends the season still doting on her, holding onto his unrequited crush. The only major thing he does is team up with Gori and Washimi to confront Tadano over not being a great boyfriend, but it's hard to exactly cheer him on when his intentions aren't selfless. Yes, he wants to help Retsuko as a friend, but it's also clear that he wants Retsuko to be single again so that she can still be available. Overall, the whole season is just not that satisfying. It was worrying that the show seemed too afraid to have any substantial changes to its characters or any deviations from the status quo. Would the show really just be Retsuko dating a different guy each year until she finally gets with Haida? Surely, this show about a woman navigating a professional field won't just evolve into a will they won't they, right? Surely, Season 3 will mix things up, right? Well, yes and no. So, that third season, huh? Okay, so the thing is, this season isn't all that bad for the most part. I actually like a lot of it more than Season 2. Let me explain. So, when Retsuko accidentally hits someone else's car, she's left in some big financial woe, and to pay off this debt, she has to take a side gig as a financial advisor for an idol group. As the season goes on, she realizes that she's good at this side gig and actually helps the group find greater success. Eventually, she even becomes part of the group herself. Singing metal goes from a hobby that she uses to de-stress to a fulfilling career, and by the end of the season, Retsuko actually quits her job and becomes a full-time idol. Like in the past 2 seasons, there's a moment where Retsuko makes a pivotal choice, and for the first time, that choice isn't related to a relationship. She has to choose between a career that's safe but tedious, or one that's risky but fulfilling, and she chooses the latter. This plot was so much more engaging than Season 2. It grew Retsuko in ways that we haven't seen before, and had some darkly realistic commentary about the idol industry. It was seemingly setting up a large status quo shift for this series. If you haven't watched the show, you're probably wondering what the catch is. Soon. So, meanwhile, simultaneous to Retsuko's story, Haida has a very prominent B-plot involving his struggle to move on from his crush. Another coworker, named Inui, has a crush on him, and Haida has to choose between finally moving on from Retsuko or continuing to crush on her. At first, it felt like this was finally gearing up for some long-needed growth for the character, with him finally realizing that Retsuko isn't his only romantic option. There's a point in the season where Haida suspects that Retsuko is involved in something shady due to her secrecy around her side gig. Because of this, he follows/stalks her all the way to another city, yeah, we'll get to that later, where he then discovers that Retsuko has secretly been singing as an idol. This gives him an epiphany that he doesn't really know Retsuko. He thought he knew her from their casual work relationship over the years, but now he finds out that she isn't really the person that he thought she was. He was in love with the idea of her, not the woman herself. In this moment, he decides to move on and finally hang out with Inui, possibly exploring a romantic relationship with her. And then Retsuko almost dies. So, toward the end of the season, there's an incredibly dark and profane moment where a crazed ex-fan of Retsuko's idol group begins to completely and utterly scold her during a fan meetup. He calls her misogynist slurs, bemoans her for changing the style of the band, and forces her to make eye contact with him for 5 minutes straight. This moment begins an immense tone shift that lasts until the end of the season. At the climax, as Retsuko is walking home from work, this same fan stalks her and attempts to assault her. She only survives because Haida was following her as well and managed to tackle the stalker before she could get too hurt. It's an extremely jarring moment for a show this lighthearted, but it's not entirely unrealistic. The Japanese idol industry is incredibly exploitive and dangerous for the women involved, as actual attacks like this have happened in real life several times. Covering this type of content, especially in an idol-focused season, isn't inherently bad. What's bad is that this moment isn't about Retsuko, the main protagonist and the person who was just assaulted. This moment is made to be about Haida. Just after Retsuko is attacked, Inui shows up, and she essentially says that Haida saving his coworker has confirmed for her that he's still into Retsuko, and Haida admits that she's right. He's still in love with Retsuko. This exchange is the main emotional beat of this moment. Not that Retsuko, our main character, was almost murdered, but that Haida, her love interest, decided not to give up on his crush. If that wasn't bad enough, after this attack, Retsuko goes on leave from both of her careers to stay with her parents, which is understandable considering how traumatic the event must have been for her. But that makes Haida upset. He likes seeing Retsuko at work, so she needs to come back already. Then a dating app matches him and Retsuko together. So he goes to her home, uninvited, drags her out into public, brings her to her private karaoke safe place, sings a song where he calls her a chicken for taking a leave of absence from her miserable job after nearly being killed, and when Retsuko tries to defend herself, even telling him off for behaving this selfishly, he interrupts her and that's it. That's the end of the moment. Retsuko then retires from her idol job and returns to her miserable position at work, as usual, where Haida can still see her. There is a lot to unpack in this final episode. So, first of all, let's talk about how Haida has literally been stalking Retsuko throughout the entire season. The first time, Gory's with him, and the two are afraid she's involved in some shady business, so it almost seems justified, up until the point that Haida literally follows her onto a plane to another city. This isn't even me taking the show's actions out of context, as Gory literally lampshades how that would be a step too far. Again, in the finale, he follows her as she's walking home from work. The plot ends up justifying his actions by him saving Retsuko, but he still followed her home. Just because the writers contrived a situation where that's okay, that doesn't make it okay. The show literally created a duality between a good stalker with Haida and a bad stalker with the attacker. It's not a good look. Yes, you can make the argument that he was concerned about her well-being on both occasions, but loving and wanting to protect their victims is an argument that actual stalkers or abusers often use to justify their actions. This is all part of a larger issue with Haida that has existed throughout the entire show, but has become worse and worse. Haida is practically obsessed with Retsuko. We don't know much about his personal life, or his goals, or his ambitions, besides the fact that he wants to date a girl from work. That the series itself shows, he barely knows. Yet, as the series has gone on, he's only grown more and more obsessed, turning down opportunity after opportunity to move on or grow in favor of still hitting on this girl that has several times said she is not interested. Haida is presented as a likable nice guy love interest, but he'd be any working woman's worst nightmare. A man who works right near her, with an unrelenting crush, who won't take no for an answer after several years, to the point where he stalks her on multiple occasions, barges into her home unannounced after a traumatic event because a dating app matched them up, calls her a coward after she again almost died, and then cuts her off when she once again tries to turn him down and speak for herself. And all of this is justified by the narrative. The final scene of the season is Haida asking Retsuko out to lunch, and she says yes. Because no matter how long the show prolongs it, it is absolutely clear that Retsuko and Haida getting together is the endgame. Not only that, but it's the focal point of the series. The climax of each season has involved Haida in some way, whether it's him asking Retsuko out, or him confronting Tadano, or everything in Season 3. It's become clear that the show's main journey is less about Retsuko learning how to cope with the misogynist and capitalist system that treats her like garbage, and more about the epic love story between her and a nice guy coworker that she just needs to give a chance. Every pivotal choice Retsuko has made throughout the series isn't part of a journey for her to find happiness in an uncaring world. No, it's built up until Retsuko finally realizes that she should just choose to be with Haida, and that'll fix everything and totally not result in an unhealthy relationship. Any commentary or actual real-life struggles brought up in the meantime aren't as important as this fictitious happily ever after. Because at the end of Season 3, before Retsuko can make her own choice on how she wants to go on, Haida interrupts her and makes that choice for her. She shouldn't be with Rosasuke, or Tadano, or the idol group. She should just choose to be with Haida. That's the journey that she's going on. Because if something were to actually improve in her life, there wouldn't be a show. And if there wasn't a show, there wouldn't be merchandise. At the end of the day, Aggretsuko is still a Sanrio IP that is primarily meant to make money. But unlike Hello Kitty, who profits off of being cute and vaguely feminine, Aggretsuko profits off of the actual lived misogyny and frustrations that women deal with in the workplace. Without that real-life issue, her character wouldn't even exist. Aggretsuko is the cartoon flower painted onto the rubber sandal of structuralized misogyny. Because as the founder of Sanrio states, if you attach added value or design to the product, they sell in a completely different way. And if you attach a character to a real-life struggle, then you can sell it. That's capitalism, I guess. Even with these flaws, I wouldn't say Aggretsuko is an inherently bad series. I'm not here to say Aggretsuko is garbage and here's why. If you still like the show, that's fine. I'm not going to downplay the overall importance of Retsuko's character either. As I said earlier, her existence is still extremely cathartic for many Japanese women in the workplace. Just because the endgame of a series involves a romance, it doesn't mean that the show can't still connect with people or bring an important message. However, when making a character with this much reach and importance, you have a responsibility to use that platform well. If a character or series was made because of the real-life existence of sexism in the workplace, then they should actually say something impactful to put change into the world. The first season of Aggretsuko seemed like it was maybe even doing that, which makes the fact that the series has lost that message in favor of focusing on an unhealthy, drawn-out romance incredibly disappointing.